Welcome to the first video on this channel, Gloves on Greatness, where I'll share my thoughts on the big fights in boxing and we can have a civil conversation about two men punching each other whilst making it look beautiful. Today we'll cover the most recent major fight, which was Chavez Jr. versus Jake Paul. Yeah, not messing, we ain't covering that fight over here. Anybody with a brain would not be covering that fight. And what made that fight even worse was, unlike Netflix, DAZN didn't even pull out the big guns. Where were Mike Tyson's ass cheeks? What are we paying to watch? But what I'm actually on about was UsykDubois 2. Now, my opinions before the fight itself, I was on the fence. Alexander Usyk, he came in, he was looking unbeatable at this point. Daniel Dubois was on a hot win streak as well. The fight with Miller was good, the fight with Herkovich was good, and the fight with Anthony Joshua, he absolutely demolished him. It truly did feel that Dubois, he matured as a fighter and he was molding into the future of the heavyweight division. But as the build-up to the fight progressed, I began to side more with Usyk. The way Team Dubois behaved and mainly Don Charles behaved made me want Usyk to win even more. And then when I saw Usyk's demeanor, he had a bit of spite in him. I was kind of more convinced that not only would Alexander Usyk win, he would most likely try to win by knockout, just to make an example of Daniel Dubois. Don't push the fucking horses. Now the fight itself, in my opinion, it was alright. Not boring, but not something I would actively go search up to watch, unless the fifth round knockout got recommended to me through one of the YouTube shorts. Now, aside from that, the fight was pretty one-sided. It was another piece of evidence to Usyk's greatness. Usyk, he came in, he established the jab straight away. From the very get-go, he was moving well. He was under Daniel Dubois' jab. He controlled the center of the ring. His footwork was great. He was catching Dubois with counters all night long, and then eventually put Dubois down with the punch that he's now named Ivan. What I do want to touch upon is Don Charles being a clown. Now, one of the things that really did trigger me here was the way Don Charles was talking so much shit like he was the one getting into the ring. I don't know where the confidence came from, because aside from Daniel Dubois, if you take a look at Don Charles' career, the only other notable fighter Don Charles trained was Derek Chisora, who, as much as I love Del Boy, he was a punching bag for the actual champions of the division. He was at most, he was at gatekeeper level. And Tyson Fury, I mean, was just using him as a punch bag. I don't really know what's going on between him and Fury. While we are on the topic of delusional confidence, let's talk about George Fox too. I mean, he was telling Alexander Usyk, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, that in a street fight he'd rip the eyes out of his skull. This is the guy who lost to somebody called Kamil Sokwasher. So I'm not sure where he's getting this idea that he would rip Usyk's eyes out of his head. But I mean, just the fact that he's able to say that to somebody who's miles better than him. I mean, imagine if he said something like that to the heavyweights in the 90s. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't work out well for him. Even today, I mean, imagine if he went up there and said something like that to someone with the likes of Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder. It's just an absolute shit brain, really. But yeah, getting back to Don Charles again, he just sat there, he was calling out Usyk's faith, he was disrespecting him as a fighter, he was claiming that he should receive an Oscar for his performance in the rematch after getting, which I felt was a clear low blow. I mean, if according to Don Charles, the criteria for getting, given an Oscar-worthy performance is getting punched in the balls by Daniel Dubois, then we need Dubois to do us all a favor and punch The Rock and Gal Gadot in the balls, because them two's acting is fucking awful. Don Charles pretty much made this so much more worse than what it should have been for Daniel Dubois. I mean, he even lost the first time around. Yeah, he got the criticism for taking the knee. I feel like this time around, he just got embarrassed a bit more, purely because Don Charles was talking so much shit on the way his team carried themselves. Don Charles basically just played the role of the kid in school who talked the shit because he knew he had a friend who could fight, and then just stood there like a knob once his friend got beat up. And the entire Team Dubois was pretty much a circus. I mean, if you hear the stuff that was going on with his dad and the pre-fight party, I don't understand what they were doing there. But yeah, apparently his dad decided to become Diddy before the fight happened and threw in a party where he called people that were not even known to Daniel Dubois, and there was about 70 people in the house, where even Dubois got uncomfortable. Once he saw the baby oil be whipped out, Daniel Dubois got into a car and he decided to just drive away. Stan Dubois then went ahead and even had an argument and caused a delay over parking spots because he wanted to take the entire party and roll up to the fight. And I find this quite funny because after the fight and everything that happened, there's an interview of him with Radio Raheem where Stan Dubois was just running around in the car park. He's quite breathless and he's trying to find a car to go home. And I'm just thinking, if you've had an argument and you've delayed the event and everything to get a car, to get parking space for more people, why is there not a car for you to go home at the end of the day? Is this I don't know how that happens. But yeah, he just kind of just ran around looking lost in the car park, and he couldn't find a car to go home. But I mean, it's again, I don't know why, but some of the boxing does really tend to make life so much more harder for the fighters than it needs to be. There was also ringside people were saying, Dave Allen saying that Daniel Dubois, he wasn't even listening to Don Charles. He was actually turning away from Don Charles and just looking straight at his dad. So I'm not sure what is going on there. The entire Don Charles and Daniel Dubois relationship is really weird because throughout the entire build-up, Daniel Dubois was just elbowing and pushing Don Charles away.
Fuck off.
Don't know what the full story there is. Even the part, what was bizarre was after the fight, Don Charles even saying to Daniel Dubois that thank the crowd. I mean, if that was anybody else in the position, I mean, if Sugar Hills told Fury to thank the crowd, or if Ben Davidson told Anthony Joshua to thank the crowd, those guys would get eaten alive by the fans. Daniel Dubois, again, because he's always a bit aloof and he seems to not be there all the time, I think he got the pass. But again, it was just really weird. Now, the big question that does surround this fight is pretty much, did Daniel Dubois quit? In my opinion, I do feel yes, he did. Now, before I do go further into this, I do believe that we should respect every fighter that gets into the ring, even, twats like Charles Martin, because at the end of the day, they are putting their health at risk for us. So everybody that gets into the ring, there should be that level of respect with them. But that's pretty much where it does. My props for Daniel Dubois come to an end with this fight. I felt the first time when he was dropped, Dubois got caught with a couple of counters. That was the only real time that they made it a scrap in the entire fight. Usyk was not running like Anthony Joshua or Hergwit did. He stood and fought his ground, and what happened there was, or to me at least, it felt that once he caught Dubois with a couple of, it was two good punches that he caught Dubois within that scrap, and Dubois kind of just shied away. He turned around and he took the knee. The referee started the count. Usyk walks back to his corner. Dubois rose up and he got caught again with the second punch. Ivan. At this point, right, this is where it all gets really weird because Dubois gets hit over here and it still looked like he was perfectly fine. It still looked like he was in his senses. At first, he laid there looking like, he was posing like he was about to shoot for the next issue of Playboy. Then once he saw the referee come and sit next to his face and start counting, Dubois then sat up like a toddler and started counting along with the referee. It was clear he didn't want to get up, and it was clear that he's pretty much just quit because right after the count finished, Dubois casually got up and he walked away up to Don Charles and the rest of the party with his dad. Now, it's again, I'm not saying that fighters should beat themselves to death for us, or because or seriously injure themselves. Even when he lost to Joe Joyce, I actually cut Dubois a bit of slack over there as well because he ended up seriously hurting his eyes. We don't want him to permanently damage himself, and we want everybody returning home safely. But at the same time, people are paying money for this. Dubois getting paid in the millions. It's a undisputed championship fight. If you can get up and you can give it one more push, just to make it worth the fans' while, why not do that? They always tell us, heavyweight boxing, it's one punch changes everything. And then seeing somebody like Daniel Dubois just kind of give up on the spot, it just feels like a slap in the face. And then again, if you compare it to what we've got, just again, even in Daniel Dubois' previous fight where you had him with Anthony Joshua, he was knocking Anthony Joshua down all the place. AJ was at the end was using his face as leverage to him and still try to get up in the fifth round. Same with Tyson Fury. You can knock Tyson Fury all over the place. He'll still find a way to get back up to carry and going. Zhilei Zhang knocked Deontay Wilder senseless. Yet Deontay Wilder still managed to get up and try to beat the count. So it just brings a bit more respect, and for them guys, obviously, for just a bit more appreciation for them. At the same time, it raises questions because you'll be wondering with Daniel Dubois, does he have the mindset for the fights that are coming up for him? Does he have the mindset of a champion? With the guys that are setting up in, you've got to realize Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Wilder, even Joseph Parker or Alexander Usyk, that's the generation of heavyweights that is coming to an end. They're at the last chapters of their career. Daniel Dubois still has quite a couple of years to go forward. Daniel Dubois has other heavyweights out there that are really going to be matched up with him, so we could probably get a grasp of what Dubois' skill is. This fight with Usyk, really, it was the equivalent of, I'd say, how they crowned AJ as the next big thing for the heavyweight division after he beat Vladimir Klitschko. This was the same thing for Daniel Dubois. Now, in the future, obviously, when Dubois does start coming up with the guys that are around his time now, he's now the likes to face Moses Atumo's facing Dillian White, it just coming up now. It makes you question, with the mindset that he's got, would he, if he was to fight Moses Atumo, would he take the knee? Would he quit? Same question comes with Kabayel. Again, Kabayel's relentless. Would Daniel Dubois be able to deal with that pressure? Would Daniel Dubois quit? Fabio Wally, I'm going to use as an example because if I'm not sure if you saw his fight with Justice Hooney, Fabio Wally took a beating in that fight. He was getting outboxed, yet he fought till the very end, and right at the end he caught him with a clean right and he ended up winning the fight. Now, there was a bit of controversy there with the people. Some people felt it was an early stoppage, but I'm not going to dive too much into that. All I'm going to say is Wardley kept into the fight and he fought to the very last moment. I do truly feel if Dubois was in Wardley's place at that point and he was getting outboxed the way Hooney was doing to Wardley, Dubois would most likely have taken the knee and gone out of there or mentally just given up. This is obviously something that the team needs to look into, but then that relates back to what's going on in the corner and what's going on with Dubois' dad. Because if you've got your dad going about and throwing parties and just absolutely, having a rave whilst you're not getting along with your coach, that's problems. Either Dubois needs to sort out his team or he needs to go back to the drawing board and take a look at himself, sort himself out mentally. Now, what I do want to discuss next is for both fighters is what is next for them. We'll start with Usyk first because it's pretty easy. What's next for Alexander Usyk is clear. For Alexander Usyk, retirement. He's done everything in the current era of boxing. He's a former cruiserweight undisputed champion, a 2-time heavyweight undisputed champion, and if he continues to fight, there's a high chance he'll become a 3 times heavyweight as well if he drops the WBO belt. I mean, I don't think he is fighting Parker. As much as I do want to see that fight, I do feel like Parker is the only other guy, if Usyk does continue fighting, that does deserve the title shot. Not Anthony Joshua, not Tyson Fury. God, not Tyson Fury. We do not want to see a third Tyson Fury fight because at this point, Alexander Usyk, regardless of however he says it, is 38, is young. It's just a start. Father time is undefeated. The last thing that we want, any respecting boxing fan wants, is for Tyson Fury to catch Alexander Usyk on a bad day or on the decline, and then just go about it for the rest of his entire life and just retire at that point and claim to be the greatest of the division, because that is what Fury does. And it would just be sad to see that. And that's just the same for pretty much everybody else at the moment as well. With Alexander Usyk, he's not getting any younger. We all know he's a great fighter. That's why I do feel he should retire, because the last thing I want to see is, father time beating Usyk. He's a shadow in former self, and then one of the younger upcoming heavyweights ends up beating him, and they just use his name as a trophy. But again, if he does continue to fight, I think he has made his intentions clear. It should be Joseph Parker. It shouldn't be anybody else. But what I do feel most likely will happen with him is I think they are planning a third Fury fight, because that's the best payday out there for Usyk. Which, again, like I said, I don't agree with that. I don't think Fury deserves a third fight. Not the only fight out there for Tyson Fury really is Anthony Joshua. I don't know why they're not making that. But yeah, that is pretty much what I feel is next for Alexander Usyk. Now with Daniel Dubois, it gets a bit more. We can. There's a bit more options here for Dubois, because he's still quite young. He still can make a comeback for himself. Now, in my opinion, there's 2 fights out here for Daniel Dubois. You may not agree with these, but I'm just going to go out with it. The first fight, I feel like it should be an Anthony Joshua rematch. I think this is a sensible option. Reason being is because AJ is not getting any younger either. The fight would generate money. These two would sell out of Wembley easily again. It'd keep Dubois relevant. It'd make AJ relevant, whilst, all that drama's unfolding with who's fighting Usyk for the belts. You could have these two having a British level scrap, which will draw the attention of the world. And again, if Dubois ends up knocking out AJ a second time and he makes it look good, Dubois put himself right back up there again. Joshua would have to do some serious consideration. But this is where I feel like it gets a bit weird, because I think, I feel like Anthony Joshua is chasing Tyson Fury because AJ feels like his time in the sport's limited. At the same time, I feel like Team Dubois might just avoid that AJ rematch. The only reason is because there's still speculations saying that Joshua had a bad day at the office in the first fight with Dubois. If that is the case, there's a high chance where if AJ comes out in his A game, and in my opinion, I do feel this, if Joshua does come out in his A game, if both fighters are at the best, I feel like Joshua will come out as a better man. If Joshua comes out as a better man in the rematch, that is trouble for Daniel Dubois, because what that then does is discredits his first win. I wouldn't discredit it. He came out there, he put up a great performance. It was Joshua's fault, regardless of whatever happened on the night. Daniel Dubois was a better fighter. He demolished Anthony Joshua. If AJ in the rematch comes back and beats Dubois and he makes it look easy, or he just goes ahead and he beats Dubois, they're just gonna choke the first fight up as well. It's AJ just having a bad day, or Dubois just fluke out a win, and it discredits Daniel Dubois even further. I don't think Warren is gonna risk Daniel Dubois getting into the ring with Anthony Joshua with that looming over. They rather just have the advantage over AJ and just keep on chasing the other fights in the other division. Now, when it does come to chasing other fights in the division, for Daniel Dubois, I feel like the only other fight I think would make sense and it would be good for him as well would be a Joe Joyce rematch. Now, this may raise some eyebrows, but hear me out. Joyce at this point is totally finished. I don't see Joe Joyce doing anything. He's a Warren fighter. You know, he's at the end of his career. I'd get one more payday out of him, and I'd put him up against Daniel Dubois. There's history there. These two would sell out. It also gives Dubois a chance of redemption, and with Joyce being at the state he currently is right now, it gives Dubois a higher chance of winning as well. So I feel like that would be a good fight for Daniel Dubois as a confident booster, and he also gets to avenge his very first loss. And then we'd also see what's happening with Joyce as well, if that is over for him, or if, you know, we never know, Joyce might just surprise us. But that is what I feel like is next for Daniel Dubois. Now, again, it's heavyweight boxing. The landscape changes almost instantly, so God knows what happens. Normally, it's never what we always want to happen. The WBO belt's getting dropped. For all we know, they might just do Parker versus Dubois for the WBO title. I think there was talks about Anthony Joshua, maybe. I think Parker mentioned that. Talks about maybe fighting AJ again. But with Joshua, there's all that talk about Jake Paul nonsense and Tony Yoka, so I'm not sure what's happening. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it for the first video on this channel. There is more to come, so please do let me know what you think in the comments. And do like, share, subscribe, and take care.